60s were a groovy time for music, with bands that rocked our world and shaped the sound of the era.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Birds.
From the Beatles to the Velvet Underground, these iconic bands defined the decade with their catchy tunes and rebellious spirit. But the 60s weren't just about the big names, there were plenty of other amazing bands that deserved a comeback.
The world's most exciting group, Capitol Recording stars, the Beatles!
Let's imagine the electric energy of the Doors, the harmonious melodies of the Beach Boys, or the psychedelic sounds of Jefferson Airplane filling concert halls once again. These bands weren't just musicians, they were cultural icons who influenced fashion, politics, and society as a whole. So let's turn back the clock and bring back these 13 famous bands from the 1960s we want back. Out of all the 60s bands, the Beatles are arguably the most famous. Formed in Liverpool, England in 1960, this four-piece band with John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr changed music forever.
Have just arrived and are about to set foot for the first time in our country.
They started with catchy pop tunes like Love Me Do and I Want to Hold Your Hand, causing a frenzy called Beatlemania with their tours and screaming fans. Their songwriting genius grew, though. They experimented with rock, folk, and even Indian influences, creating classics like Yesterday and Hey Jude. The Beatles did countless tours in the early 60s, but stopped playing live in 1966 to focus on studio recording. Despite breaking up in 1970, their music remains insanely popular. Nowadays, Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr are still actively touring, thrilling audiences with Beatles hits and solo work. John Lennon was tragically shot in 1980, and George Harrison passed away from cancer in 2001. Their music, however, lives on, inspiring new generations of musicians and reminding everyone of the power of great songs. With the melodies of the Beatles' timeless hits linger, did the Doors, with their boundary-pushing rock and Morrison's captivating stage presence, follow a trajectory akin to the Beatles' meteoric rise and eventual departure? The Doors emerged from Los Angeles in 1965, unlike many other famous 60s bands who hailed from the East Coast. This four-man group, with Jim Morrison on vocals, Ray Manzarek on keyboards, Robbie Krieger on guitar, and John Densmore on drums, wasn't afraid to push boundaries.
We want the world and we want it now.
Their music blended rock with blues and psychedelic influences, while Morrison's dark lyrics and wild stage antics captivated audiences.
I'm gonna love you.
Songs like Light My Fire and Break On Through to the Other Side became anthems, and the Doors became known for their electrifying live shows. While they never toured as extensively as some bands, their popularity was undeniable, selling millions of records. However, Morrison's struggles with alcohol and drugs became a growing concern. Tragically, he passed away in Paris in 1971. The remaining members tried to carry on for a while, but the Doors disbanded in 1973. The legacy of the Doors lives on. Ray Manzarek continued making music until his passing in 2013. Robbie Krieger and John Densmore have toured with other musicians under the Doors name, but legal battles have caused friction. Regardless, the Doors music continues to be relevant, a reminder of a time when rock challenged the status quo and dared to be different. California Dreamin' in the 60s wouldn't be complete without the Beach Boys. Formed in 1961 by brothers Brian, Dennis, and Carl Wilson, their cousin Mike Love, and friend Al Jardine, this Southern California band brought sunshine to music. Their early hits like Surfin' USA and California Girls captured the carefree vibe of California beach culture with their sweet harmonies and catchy melodies. The Beach Boys weren't just about fun in the sun, though. Under Brian Wilson's creative lead, they later pushed boundaries with complex arrangements and introspective lyrics in albums like Pet Sounds. They toured extensively in the early 60s, playing thousands of shows to screaming fans. However, Brian Wilson's struggles with mental health led to him stepping back from touring in the late 60s. The band continued with ups and downs, including the tragic deaths of Dennis Wilson in 1983 and Carl Wilson in 1998. Mike Love and Bruce Johnston, a later addition to the band, continue to tour as the Beach Boys today, keeping the California dream alive for new generations. Brian Wilson tours occasionally as a solo artist, still performing Beach Boys classics alongside his own work. The Beach Boys' influence on music is undeniable, proving that catchy tunes and thoughtful lyrics can coexist to create a timeless sound. The Beach Boys' harmonies continue to evoke the sun-kissed shores of California, but did the Byrds, with their pioneering fusion of folk and rock, embark on a musical journey comparable to the Beach Boys' exploration of carefree beach culture? Will the Byrds' lasting influence on folk rock, despite lineup changes and limited mainstream success, parallel the Beach Boys' enduring legacy? The Byrds emerged from Los Angeles in 1964, pioneering a sound that would define an era, folk rock. The band, with Roger McGuinn, originally Jim McGuinn, on jangly 12-string guitar, Gene Clark on vocals, David Crosby on vocals and rhythm guitar, Chris Hillman on bass, and Michael Clark on drums, took folk music and electrified it. Their signature sound was a jangly guitar courtesy of McGuinn's innovative use of a 12-string Rickenbacker and McGuinn's high-pitched vocals. They became famous for their unique covers of Bob Dylan songs like Mr. Tambourine Man and Turn, 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 introducing Dylan's poetry to a whole new rock audience. They also wrote their own hits, including the psychedelic rock anthem 8 Miles High. The Byrds were constantly evolving. Crosby left in 1967 to form Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, another legendary band. Other members came and went, but McGuinn remained the constant. Despite their artistic influence, mainstream success was fleeting. The band broke up in 1973, but their music lives on. Sadly, Gene Clark passed away in 1991. David Crosby continues to make music, Chris Hillman performs with various groups, and Roger McGuinn still tours occasionally. The jangly chords of the Byrds' folk rock resonate. Nevertheless, did Creedence Clearwater Revival, with their gritty swamp rock sound and John Fogerty's iconic vocals, embark on a journey akin to the Byrds' pioneering fusion of folk and electrified rock? Creedence Clearwater Revival, CCR, or just Creedence, roared onto the scene in 1967 out of El Cerrito, California. Led by the iconic John Fogerty on vocals, guitar, and songwriting, CCR wasn't your typical Sunshine and Good Times California band. They were grittier, with Fogerty's swamp rock sound blending blues, rock and roll, and a touch of country. The band consisted of John's rhythm guitarist brother, Tom Fogerty, bassist Stu Cook, and drummer Doug Clifford. They toured relentlessly in the late 60s and early 70s, becoming incredibly popular with their electrifying live shows. Hits like Proud Mary, Bad Moon Rising, and the anti-war anthem Fortunate Son blasted from radios and concert halls, selling millions of records. Despite their success, tensions rose within the band, particularly between John Fogerty and other members over creative control. Sadly, CCR disbanded in 1972. The Fogerty brothers tragically never reconciled musically, with John Fogerty embarking on a successful solo career. Tom Fogerty passed away in 1990. Stu Cook and Doug Clifford continue to perform, though not together or under the CCR name due to legal issues. John Fogerty's rough vocals and Creedence Clearwater Revival's swamp rock may not be for everyone, but their influence on rock and roll is undeniable. Their music continues to be a soundtrack for generations, a reminder of a time when rock had a powerful voice and a band wasn't afraid to get a little dirty. The psychedelic late 60s wouldn't be the same without the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Emerging in London in 1966, this band wasn't technically American, but founder Jimi Hendrix was a Seattle native who exploded onto the British rock scene. Hendrix's virtuosity on the guitar was unmatched, with his innovative techniques using feedback and effects pedals creating a whole new sound. The experience, completed by British rhythm section Noel Redding on bass and Mitch Mitchell on drums, became known for their mind-blowing live shows. Hendrix wasn't just a guitarist. He was a showman, often playing behind his back or with his teeth. Their psychedelic rock anthems like Purple Haze and Hey Joe became staples, influencing generations of guitarists. Despite only lasting 3 years due to Hendrix's tragic passing in 1970, the Jimi Hendrix Experience left an undeniable mark. Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell continued playing music for a while but never quite recaptured the magic. Jimi Hendrix's legacy lives on as one of the greatest guitarists ever, forever inspiring awe with his innovative playing and electrifying performances. As the electrifying riffs of the Jimi Hendrix Experience fade, did the Velvet Underground, with their experimental edge and defiance of mainstream norms, tread a path similar to Hendrix's innovative spirit and boundary-pushing sound? The Velvet Underground emerged from New York City's underground scene in 1964. This wasn't your typical pop band. Lou Reed, the vocalist and guitarist, wasn't afraid to tackle edgy themes like drug use and social alienation in his lyrics. The band's core included John Cale on viola and various instruments, bringing an experimental edge with his unconventional sounds.
But I know that
Sterling Morrison was on guitar, and Maureen "Mo" Tucker on drums rounded out the group. They weren't about mainstream success. Andy Warhol, the pop art icon, became their manager and introduced them to his multimedia project, The Exploding Plastic Inevitable. Their live shows were a multi-sensory experience, with Warhol's projections and films adding a layer of artistic provocation. They did gain a devoted following for their raw sound and unconventional approach, but commercial success remained elusive. Their 1967 debut album, The Velvet Underground and Nico, featuring German singer Nico, is now considered a landmark record despite poor sales at the time. The band disbanded in 1973. Lou Reed went on to a successful solo career, exploring the darker side of life in his music. John Cale became a respected producer and solo artist. Sterling Morrison passed away in 1995, and Maureen Tucker continues to play music occasionally.
don't know just what to do. Oh, yeah.
The Velvet Underground may not have sold millions of records in their day, but their influence on punk, alternative rock, and experimental music is massive. Their music remains a testament to the power of defying expectations and creating art that challenges the status quo. The experimental sounds of the Velvet Underground reverberate, but will Jefferson Airplane's legacy, blending social commentary with innovative music, resonate as deeply as the Velvet Underground's influence on punk and experimental rock? San Francisco's Jefferson Airplane soared onto the scene in 1965, taking off as pioneers of psychedelic rock. This band wasn't just about catchy tunes, though. Originally featuring Marty Balin, Paul Kantner, Jorma Kaukonen, Sinatoli Anderson, Bob Harvey, and Jerry Peliquin, they tackled social issues and counterculture themes in their music. Their sound truly took flight with the addition of powerhouse vocalist Grace Slick in 1966. Her edgy vocals and Jack Cassidy's thumping bass, along with Spencer Dryden's drumming, transformed them into a danceable force with a message. They headlined legendary festivals like Monterey Pop, Woodstock, and Altamont, becoming synonymous with the Summer of Love. Their 1967 album, Surrealistic Pillow, was a landmark record featuring the iconic psychedelic anthem White Rabbit and the radio-friendly Somebody to Love. They weren't afraid to experiment, though, weaving extended jams and innovative soundscapes into their music. Notwithstanding their success, tensions rose within the band in the late 60s due to creative differences and drug use. Sadly, they disbanded in 1972, leaving a legacy of influential music. Marty Balin pursued a solo career, passing away in 2018, while Paul Kantner continued making music with various groups until he died in 2016. Jorma Kaukonen and Jack Cassidy found success with the blues rock outfit Hot Tuna, and Grace Slick continues to perform occasionally. Jefferson Airplane may be gone, but their music, a blend of social commentary, soaring vocals, and psychedelic flourishes, remains a reminder of a revolutionary time in music history. Their influence on rock and roll is undeniable, inspiring generations of musicians to push boundaries and challenge the norm. The Grateful Dead, formed in 1965 in San Francisco, wasn't your average rock band. They were more like a musical family, jamming out epic live shows that became legendary. Led by the iconic Jerry Garcia on guitar and vocals, their psychedelic rock weaved elements of folk, blues, and bluegrass into a sound all their own. Bob Weir, guitar vocals. Ron Pigpen McKernan, keyboards, harmonica, vocals. Phil Lesh, bass, vocals, and Bill Kreutzmann, drums. Rounded out the original lineup. The Dead didn't chase radio hits. Instead, they cultivated a devoted following known as Deadheads, who followed them on tour after tour. Their live shows were the main attraction, with extended instrumental jams and improvisation that kept audiences enthralled for hours. They weren't afraid to experiment, venturing into different musical territories with each performance. In spite of their lack of mainstream success, the Dead sold out stadiums and amassed a massive cult following. Sadly, they faced tragedy with Pigpen's passing in 1973 and Jerry Garcia's death in 1995. The band disbanded, but their music lives on. Phil Lesh and Bob Weir continue to perform with various iterations of the band, keeping the spirit of the Dead alive for new generations. Bill Kreutzmann also remains active in music. The Grateful Dead's legacy is far-reaching. They redefined the concept of a live concert, fostering a sense of community, and inspiring countless musicians with their dedication to improvisation and exploration. Detroit's The Supremes, originally called the Primettes in 1959, weren't just another girl group. They became the crown jewel of Motown Records in the 1960s, revolutionizing pop music. The core trio of Diana Ross, Florence Ballard, and Mary Wilson brought powerhouse vocals and stunning harmonies that captivated audiences. Early on, they struggled to find their signature sound. Berry Gordy, Motown's mastermind, finally cracked the code in 1964 with the mega hit, "Where Did Our Love Go?" This launched an incredible run of 5 consecutive U.S. #1 singles, including classics like Baby Love and Stop in the Name of Love. The Supremes dominated the charts, becoming the most successful act in Motown history. Diana Ross emerged as the clear lead singer. And for a time, the group was even renamed Diana Ross and the Supremes. However, tensions arose with Florence Ballard, who was eventually replaced by Cindy Birdsong in 1967. Despite continued success, Diana Ross left for a solo career in 1970. The Supremes soldiered on with lineup changes, but their peak was behind them. Sadly, Florence Ballard passed away in 1976. The group disbanded for good in 1977. Mary Wilson, the sole constant throughout their career, remains active today, a powerful advocate for the Supremes' legacy. Diana Ross became a global superstar. The Supremes' influence is undeniable. They shattered racial barriers and inspired countless singers with their powerful voices and catchy melodies. Their timeless music continues to be a soundtrack of a bygone era, a reminder of the time when girl groups ruled the airwaves. From Queens, New York, Simon and Garfunkle weren't just a band in the 1960s, they were a harmony-fueled force.
Still a man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest.
Paul Simon, the songwriter, and Art Garfunkle, the vocalist, started young, as Tom and Jerry, but truly hit their stride in the early 60s with folk music. Their early albums didn't break records, but songs like The Sounds of Silence showcased their beautiful blend and introspective lyrics, building a loyal following. By the mid-60s, they embraced rock elements, creating a signature sound. Albums like Wednesday Morning, 3 a.m. featured hits like I Am a Rock, a response to critics, and a rock-infused version of The Sound of Silence. They toured extensively, captivating audiences with their unique blend of folk and rock.
Sitting on a sofa on a Sunday afternoon.
Their creative peak arrived in the late 60s with Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme, and the legendary Bridge Over Troubled Water. Songs like Mrs. Robinson and The Boxer became anthems, showcasing their musical maturity and poetic lyrics. However, despite their immense success, tensions arose. Simon, the creative engine, and Garfunkle, who craved more artistic input, grew apart. They broke up in 1970 but reunited for occasional performances over the years. Paul Simon embarked on a successful solo career exploring world music influences. Art Garfunkel focused on acting and solo music. Their music, however, transcended their differences. Simon and Garfunkel remains one of the most beloved duos, a testament to the power of harmony and heartfelt lyrics. Their music continues to resonate with new generations, a reminder that sometimes the simplest melodies can leave a lasting impact. The Mamas and the Papas brought sunshine harmonies and California dreams to the music scene in 1965. Hailing from New York City, the band wasn't your typical group. John Phillips, the mastermind and songwriter, brought his wife, Michelle Phillips, and Denny Doherty together. The final piece of the puzzle was Cass Elliot, a powerhouse vocalist who overcame initial resistance due to her weight. Their sound was a unique blend of folk and pop, with John's beautiful melodies intertwined with the rich vocals of the Mamas, Michelle and Cass, and the smooth tenor of Papas, John and Denny. Songs like California Dreamin' and I Saw Her Again captured the carefree spirit of the 60s and became instant classics. They toured extensively in the mid-60s, captivating audiences with their energetic live shows and undeniable stage presence. Millions of records were sold, making them one of the hottest acts of the era. However, beneath the sunshine facade, tensions simmered. Internal conflicts fueled by relationship issues and substance abuse began to tear the band apart. Despite critical acclaim for their 1967 album, The Mamas and the Papas, the cracks were evident. The band disbanded in 1968. John Phillips continued songwriting and producing, while Michelle Phillips pursued an acting career. The talented Cass Elliot embarked on a successful solo career, tragically cut short by a heart attack in 1974. Denny Doherty battled personal struggles and passed away in 2007. The Mamas and the Papas may have been short-lived, but their legacy lives on. Their music remains a reminder of a more carefree time, filled with beautiful melodies and lush harmonies. They continue to inspire new generations of musicians, proving that the power of great songs and vocal magic can truly be timeless. The sunshine harmonies of the Mamas and the Papas fade. However, did the Monkees, with their manufactured beginnings and chart-topping hits, undergo a journey similar to the Mamas and the Papas, facing internal tensions despite their initial success? The Monkees weren't your typical rock band of the 1960s. In fact, they weren't even a band at first.
Then I saw her face. Now I'm a believer.
Formed in Los Angeles in 1965, Mickey Dolenz, Davy Jones, Michael Nesmith, and Peter Tork were cast as characters in a wacky TV sitcom of the same name.
Here we come, walk down the street.
The show's concept revolved around four guys trying to make it as a rock band, and the actors provided the vocals for the pre-recorded music. The Monkees became an instant sensation. Their catchy pop tunes, heavily influenced by the Beatles and the British Invasion, topped the charts. Hits like Last Train to Clarksville, I'm a Believer, and Daydream Believer blasted from radios everywhere, selling millions of records. While session musicians played the instruments for recordings at first, the band members eventually learned their instruments and started performing live. However, tensions arose. The Monkees wanted more creative control over their music, but the producers preferred the prefabricated approach. This frustration, coupled with demanding touring schedules, led to dissatisfaction within the band. The Monkees disbanded in 1969. Though they have reunited for various projects over the years. Sadly, Davy Jones passed away in 2012. Mickey Dolenz, Michael Nesmith, who passed away in 2021, and Peter Tork continued to perform and celebrate the Monkees' legacy. Notwithstanding the manufactured beginnings, the Monkees' influence is undeniable. Their music transcended the TV show, becoming a soundtrack for a generation. They proved that catchy melodies and fun lyrics could resonate with audiences, even if they weren't the ones playing the instruments at first.